Hello, everybody. I thought I'd record this so that people can gain my insights on frequently asked questions that people ask me. So the first, I've got some that I've put in the chat. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat. But the first one that people ask me a lot is about insomnia trigger. So one of the things that stops us sleeping well, or when we have sleep struggles, is things like triggers. And these triggers could be internal or external. So some examples of sleep struggle, insomnia triggers could be moving home. So that could be a trigger. So some people, it's quite stressful to move home. So it could be a trigger that, I've moved, I've got a new environment and I can't sleep. Another trigger could be death or divorce. These are quite stressful things, moving home, death or divorce of a spouse or a partner or close person. Another trigger could be a job, either losing a job or changing a job, or even joblessness. So that's losing a job, or maybe made redundancies. Another thing that could be a trigger. Not all triggers are negative. Some triggers could be someone had a baby, or they have a new pet to look after, a baby pet to look after. So these triggers are insomnia triggers, and they're things that hopefully they're only for short term things. So if the person's moved house or they changed job, it could be something short term, and this sleep struggle could be quite short term, and they quickly get over that because they said things settle down. But sometimes the triggers can be quite distressing. So things like if a spouse dies, so maybe, as I mentioned earlier, sorry you weren't here earlier because you were probably busy doing other things. But if a spouse dies, so as a lady, 79-year-old lady I mentioned before, they'd been married for about 50 years from when they were in their 20s. And they unfortunately, her partner passed away. So that's an insomnia trigger, and she couldn't sleep. So this insomnia trigger is something that we can deal with in different ways. So I always say to people, try and identify the trigger. So I frequently answered questions is, oh, something happened in my life and I'm struggling with sleep and I can't sleep anymore. So what's the trigger? Try and, if we can, understand the trigger, understand why the trigger happened. What can I do to mitigate the circumstances? So always say to people, if you can't sleep, learn how to rest, learn the process of resting. So rest is something we can get better at with practice. So this may seem counterintuitive, but what we can do is that we can squeeze our whole body and then relax. And when we fall into that relaxation and take that relaxation to bed with us, or when we have a nap, or when we're feeling kind of tired, that falling down and feeling that we can relax and rest physically is something we can do to enable us to overcome our sleep struggles. Another thing we can do is to breathe quite deeply and slowly and simulate for when we're on holiday or when we're naturally relaxed. So imagine you're on holiday with no care in the world. How would you breathe and you're just lying there in the shade enjoying a nice cool drink? You'd be breathing really slowly. So I want people to please bring that relaxation into bed with them when they're struggling to sleep. So things that people ask me is what I'm talking about this week. The second thing people ask me a lot is they've got a beautiful sleep and they woke up suddenly, and what do they do? This is quite common actually for sleep struggles. So you finally got to bed if you're sleeping, if you have a busy schedule, and a lot of people tell me they fall asleep no problem because they're so tired, and then they wake up suddenly and they're wide awake. So what do we do when we work? Happens to all of us. What do we do when we're wide awake? And one of the things I always tell people is if they're wide awake in the middle of the night, don't bring up your laptop. Don't bring out your phone. Um, if I were you, this is what I would do. I would first of all check in on myself. If I'm woken up suddenly, and I don't know why. What woke me up? What do I need to deal with? Quite often, I find that it's nothing I can put my finger on. Every so often, it's a fox outside. And what I do is I check in on myself, and then I speak to myself and say, don't worry, don't try and make things worse. Because sometimes I worry. I'm thinking, I'm waking up in the middle of the night. I've got a busy meeting tomorrow morning. I've got a busy day tomorrow morning, and I need to be able to get sleep and rest and relaxation. So I say to myself in my mind, don't worry, don't make things worse. Try and be at ease, and then slow your breathing, and then release any tension and relax, and just keep closing your eyes, and you will gently eventually fall asleep. That's what we do when we're woken up suddenly in the middle of the night. We check in on ourselves. We do our best to review the situation. We become at ease, slow our breathing, and release any tension. Release any mental tension, release any emotional tension, release any physical tension, and eventually drift back into sweet slumber. Brilliant. So again, pardon me, all this is practice. Practice, practice, practice. The next thing people ask me about is what's a good routine? Because a lot of people, they just fall, I'm too tired and then I fall into bed. But it's nice to have a good routine, pardon me, that supports us to sleep better, to rest better, to wake up refreshed, and we can fall into bed easier, fall into bed, because we're creatures of habits. So if we can have a nice routine to make sure that our mind is prepared for sleep, it's wonderful. So the quickest routine is something like when we have babies, a lot of us have babies, we give them a bath, we've given them a bottle, and then we give them bed. So one of the things I say to people is bottle. Bottle means you're hydrated, you've drunk enough liquid to keep you going. So, and then once you've done that, the routine should start about an hour and a half or 2 to 2 hours before we go to bed. I mentioned a lady earlier who's 79-year-old, and she slept better because she drank chamomile tea at 8 o'clock, didn't drink anything until 10 o'clock when she went to bed. So what we can simulate doing the same thing, so we can stop. So if we're going to sleep at 11, we stop drinking at 9, and we have a nice routine where we do things slower. We make our beds, we empty our bladder, we put a nice smell on our pillow, we have a nice comfortable 90, we open our window, we lock the door, we write down all our worries. We have a nice routine to make sure that we can sleep and rest and relax, and we make sure that our bed is cleared. We make sure if we're going to go to loo in an emergency, make sure there's nothing stopping us, that the way is clear. We make sure that our bedding is nice. So I have different layers so that if I'm hot, I can throw away different layers. So we have a nice routine that helps us. So I hope that helps. So we're frequently answered questions, and we've done insomnia triggers. We've done what to do when we wake up suddenly, and why do we nap is another thing that people ask me frequently. Why do we nap? So I've been recently reading a book about napping, and she's an advocate of napping, and she's actually studied napping for a long time. So she thinks that it's important to nap, and people have napped all through the century, she said, and it's only recently that we stopped napping. So nap is very important for many reasons. So she did about at least 12 reasons why we need to nap. So I'll go through some of the positives of napping. First of all, nap helps us restore our energy. Second of all, a nap is one of those things that helps us to perform better, because a lot of people who are in the music industry, virtuoso of music, they nap before performance, and they nap before their performance, and they find that by napping enables them to perform better. They have more energy. Napping gives us more energy. Napping gives us perform better. It helps them be more creative. So they've done tests where people have had a nap and they've done creative tests and they've excelled in that. Napping enables us to be emotionally more stable because if we haven't napped, we're kind of thinking, ah, but if we've napped, we're more calmer. And napping also enables us to be able to, it's one of those things that you just take for granted, but in healing. So you find that quite often, if a person has a cold or they've been ill in some way, they have a nap. They feel better, and the body goes into different types of sleep, different stages of sleep. So when people nap, they should nap for to be able to get the most out of a nap. So quite often when during the war, when Winston Churchill napped, he would go and lie down and nap. So yeah, quite often what we should do is we put away anything that distracts us. So if a person's going to nap, they should take away anything that distracts them, put their feet up and change positions and find a comfortable position and nap for 20 minutes or an hour and a half or different, depending on how much time they have. They can, in the book I've been reading about napping, she says that someone can nap for 20 minutes and then they can try and get into the next stage of sleep, depending on how much time they've got. So we go through our sleep stages within an hour or an hour and a half. So she says that the best nap that we can have is between 1 and 3 and for an hour and a half because we're certain to go through the whole stage. But she says if a person's particularly tired, she thinks they can go through the stages quicker and maybe have an hour's nap between 1 and 3. But if people don't have that, they can nap at different points during the day. So she talked about an example of a lady who took her children to nursery and she had time before she did her next lecture. She was a next lecturer. So she had time between when she got to the office and when she did her first lecture to have a nap. So naps can be put into different places depending on our work schedule and depending on how tired we are and depending on how much time we have to nap. So she says that the minimum time for a nap would be 5 minutes, and she doesn't think we should nap for more than 3 hours in a day. But napping is one of those things that it can help us. Even if we don't sleep, we can just close our eyes and relax, and that will really help us. So I'm hoping that that's answered some of the frequently answered questions of what's our insomnia trigger? What do we do when we're woken up suddenly? What routine can support good sleep? And why we should take a nap and how we can nap to enable us to have good performance, good energy, and enhance our well-being naturally by napping. So if you have any questions, any comments, put them in the chat. So just to summarize, recognizing our insomnia triggers may help us understand where we're struggling to sleep. Otherwise, we can be encouraged to take steps to improve our sleep, rest, and relaxation. One of the quickest things we can do is squeeze our body and relax and fall into that relaxation when we're napping, when we need to rest, or bring that into bed with us so that we can completely rest when we're in bed. Another thing we should do is practice slow, deep breathing that's comfortable, that's not forced. And once we're sleeping, our brain takes over and it will take over our breathing. When we're woken suddenly, we should review the situation and fall into ease, slow breathing, and release tension. Our routine should enable us to go into bed and concentrate on getting the best quality sleep we can get. And we can nap because napping has so many good benefits. It's been studied, and it's one of those things that it really does help us naturally when we can nap in a positive way. Because some people say, oh, they can't nap during the day because oh, they're feeling even more tired. The reason must be because they're not using napping in the best possible way. So when people nap, they should change their position by at least putting their feet up. When people nap, they should make sure it's kind of a deliberate way to say, I'm going to nap because it has so many benefits, and I'm going to step into those benefits and do it roughly for 20 minutes or an hour to an hour and a half so that they get the full benefits of napping. And don't worry if you don't fall asleep having a nap, at least you rested. Rest is really important, that we should put effort into resting. So I hope it's been useful. Please let me know. Um, get in touch. My name is Yewande Rolph, enhancing wellbeing naturally. Thank you.